It all started 3 million years ago. Humans were nothing more than stinky apes dominating the wildlife. Among those apes was the protagonist of our story. He was just an ordinary Australopithecus with an unusually strong love for hunting. But the defining trait that set him apart was the fact that he never died. While his fellows turned to dust with the passing millennia, he remained alive to witness it all. Countless eons swept past him, but time had literally no effect on him. In the eternity of life he spent his time hunting, battling, and fighting. At some point, it became more than just a way of life. It became his obsession and sole purpose. In simpler terms, shredding his prey became his ultimate thrill. After spending 3 million years living this peak life, the guy got absolutely jacked. With nothing but raw physical strength gained from years of combat, he became so powerful that he literally ascended to the ranks of the gods. It didn't take him long to become the #1 ranked god in the divine realm. Now Mu, the once ordinary ape, is in charge of planet Earth. But becoming a god or some divine being had never been this guy's goal, and right now, boredom is tweaking the hell out of him. Out of sheer boredom, he lightly presses the ground beneath him with just his toe. That one tap is enough to shake the entire planet. The planet he's sitting on happens to be the god's sanctuary, known as the divine realm. Every other god in the sanctuary feels the massive earthquake caused by Mu's casual tap. The second-ranked god, Lucifer, the god of Elmir, is especially annoyed by the tremor because he has no doubt who's responsible for it. Meanwhile, Mu slumps on his throne, his mood visibly sour. Apparently, he's already fought everyone who might have posed any sort of real challenge. And now, there's no one left who can stand against him. It's been so long since his last fight that he can't even remember when it was. Perhaps it was 1,000 years ago he fought for the last time. Seems like my guy is quite literally suffering from success. He's so powerful that there's no one left to challenge him. But now that he thinks about it, if there's no one strong enough to fight him, maybe all he has to do is weaken himself to make it interesting again. With this genius idea in mind, Mu decides to possess the body of a weak human from Earth, where he'll seek opportunities to fight. Without wasting time, he calls out to his familiar, Yong. The massive reptilian creature quickly appears, ready to respond to his master's summons. Yong isn't just any ordinary companion. He's the supreme god's secretary, and his name literally translates to dragon in English. When Yong asks the reason behind this sudden call, Mu casually shares his plan to visit Earth. Hearing this, Yong panics. He immediately casts an absolute binding spell, chaining his master down. He demands a plausible explanation for this abrupt and reckless decision. With the gods meeting on the horizon, Mu is supposed to stay put and fulfill his responsibilities. But Mu couldn't care less about any of that. Without even acknowledging the spell, he begins walking, dragging his massive reptilian secretary along like it's nothing. Yong desperately tries to hold him back, but it's a futile effort. The real reason Yong doesn't want Mu to leave isn't just duty, it's his own fear. This reptilian guy knows that once his master is gone, the other gods will turn their frustration and grudges on him. He's certain they'll use him as their personal punching bag to vent all the pent-up anger they've harbored toward Mu. But now that Mu has finally made up his mind, there's no power in the world that can stop him from fulfilling his desire to fight. Effortlessly, he breaks through the chains binding him and turns to his secretary. He openly declares that he'd consider staying if only Yong is willing to fight him in return. Of course, getting absolutely shredded by his own master is the last thing this poor reptile wants. So nervously, he simply wishes his master a safe trip instead. With all obstacles out of his way, Mu shifts his focus to finding a candidate to possess. Tuning into the thoughts of the humans on Earth, he scans the sea of minds, listening to their wishes and desires. Amidst the noise, one thought stands out the most to him, which is a wish from a particular guy who wants to be sent to another world. Mu grins ear to ear at this discovery. Not only has he found the perfect candidate to possess, but he can also grant this guy's wish as a bonus. It's a win-win for both of them. He then turns to his familiar and announces that he's leaving his body behind and hands over the responsibility of taking care of whoever ends up in his place. This throws Yong into an absolute frenzy. Desperately, he tries to reason with his master, explaining that if the soul leaves the body and the body dies, the soul will perish as well. But Mu, being the stubborn force of nature he is, has already made up his mind. He brushes off Yong's concerns and promises that he'll return as soon as possible. Now, let's switch to this 17-year-old earthling, Liho. Up until now, he is just a runt living his life by inserting himself as the main character in games where he can feel on top of the world. But this game is the last one he's playing because he's tired of his pathetic existence and is about to end his life. He's hoping to get ice-skied and live the life he truly desires. With no hesitation in his mind, he jumps off. As he falls, Liho curses his god, trying to provoke him into sending him to another world. Eventually, he hits the ground with a nasty splattering sound. And after dying, the next thing he sees is a massive beast standing in front of him, leaving him sweating his balls. Both Liho and Yong echo the same question. Who the fuck are you? Now, let's switch to Mu. He possesses Liho's body a second before it hits the ground. As soon as the body is rendered a bloody mess upon impact, he can barely move his limbs. Before proceeding further, here's a little lecture about involuntary muscles. Muscles that move without conscious control are called involuntary muscles. The heart and the muscles of internal organs are examples of involuntary muscles. Mu, who has spent 3 million years training, has reached the pinnacle of understanding the human form, only physically. He can consciously control every part of the body, such as blood vessels. And yes, even involuntary muscles are no exception. He repairs the heart of this dying body by manipulating the blood vessels and even manages to stop the bleeding. Honestly, it's been a while since he's bled this much, so the feeling of losing blood is just turning him on to no end. He's now feeling very proud of the decision he made to come here. First, he decides to head to the base, which of course is supposed to be the house of Earthling Liho. After getting back into his dorm room, Mu spends hours digging through memories and figures out most of the things he should know. Apparently, Liho has only one family member, and they're male, but he lives far away, so Liho lives here alone. In simple terms, Liho definitely fits the bill for being poor and miserable, and his current occupation is attending a place called school. Furthermore, there's one particular guy who's always finding excuses to beat the living daylights out of Liho. This only makes Mu happy, as the sole purpose of his visit to this planet is to fight. He's ready to jump straight into a fight and start beating the hell out of anyone who crosses him. While he's getting all hyped up, he suddenly feels a tickling pain in his muscles. He quickly realizes that this muscle soreness must be from the handstand he did earlier. Although it's aching like hell, and you'd think that would be a huge turnoff, my guy is absolutely exhilarated to feel this familiar pain of muscle soreness, something he hasn't felt in 1,000 years. The next day, the spot where Liho had fallen catches the attention of the authorities and is quickly turned into a restricted crime zone. With so much blood on the ground, they're trying to figure out who it might belong to. Mu also notices the officers gathered there, but he doesn't walk that path and simply takes a turn toward his class. After arriving at school, Mu opens the classroom door with the force of an animal, causing it to bounce back and smack him in the face. There's also this guy we have seen in Liho's memories. He takes note of Mu's presence and questions him about his foolishness. Seeing this familiar face, Mu quickly recalls that this is the same bastard who often bullied Liho. The sight of his prey being served to him on a golden plate like this makes him feel absolutely euphoric. Even the bully gets a little sassy seeing how this loser is grinning maniacally. So he puts his phone down, gets ready, and throws a punch without any warning. The punch makes Mu's face bleed, but he doesn't react at all to his enemy's attack. You see, Mu has his own rules when it comes to fighting. A fight only begins when all parties involved have an understanding. You can call it a will to fight. Therefore, the key lies in the opponent's intent. The way to confirm that intent is by waiting for the opponent's attack. Although this code of conduct causes Mu to take a lot of damage to his face, he's glad. He finally has the green light to proceed with the fight. So, without a second thought, he delivers a devastating blow right to this bastard's face. He puts so much force into his punch that all the muscles in his arm electrify with pain. The muscle soreness is unbearable. He makes a face like he just ate something nasty. Let's not forget, they're in a classroom. The teacher immediately starts shouting, furious to see these two idiots fighting. The bully, on the other hand, feels his pride crumbling after getting rocked by such a hard punch. To save his face, he launches himself at our boy. Mu quickly gets in a high alert, but he is not sure if he can save himself. If his body were in good shape, he'd easily avoid this. But since he currently lacks the necessary strength, he decides to use a different trick. Even so, he still ends up taking a hard blow from the bully. He learns the hard way that there's no mana on Earth. The bully prepares himself to throw another punch. Mu dreads the fact that he's running out of options to defend himself. But still, he steels himself to face this bastard head-on. Even if he can't use his arms, legs, or magic, my guy just uses his hard head, literally. He takes the punch directly to his skull. His skull is so solid that the bully actually hears his own bones cracking, leaving him in agonizing pain. He never thought he'd experience this. While the opponent is dazed and distracted by the pain, Mu takes the opportunity and slams his head right into the bastard's belly, right where the human's weakest point lies, the solar plexus. Afterward, he follows up with an uppercut using his head, smashing the bastard under his chin. With that final blow, the bully's knees lose all remaining strength. All the Gen Alpha kids in the room immediately grab their phones to record the guy in his misery. Everyone's faces glisten with sweat as they watch Lee Ho effortlessly win. Just yesterday, they'd seen him get beaten up, but this insane comeback is absolutely unbelievable. As for our boy, he's completely lost in his own thoughts. He vividly recalls how, when a fight ends and the excitement settles, there's a unique feeling you can only experience then. The dull, regular pain pulsing in the areas where you were hit, and the sticky, bitter taste of blood seeping into your mouth. Well, this is exactly the feeling he's been longing for. And right now, he's absolutely turned on by this overwhelming sensation. My guy crouches down and makes sure to express his gratitude to the bully. But his way of expressing his gratitude is something rather unusual, something even I didn't see coming. He literally opens his mouth, bites off the bully's ear, and spits it onto the ground in the most barbaric way possible. This sight deepens everyone's anxiety even further. To think this dude actually ripped off someone's ears so casually. Well, this is just Mu's way of leaving his mark on those who give him a fun fight. It's his twisted version of expressing gratitude while marking them as a toy that could bring him joy from now on. They'd be called Mu's play. Only strong opponents could give him a fun fight. So naturally, Mu's play became a symbol of strength in his eyes. But on Earth, this is not how things work. So it's no surprise that the custom he's been following is earning hate. Even students from other classes are talking about Mu. Sure, one student beating another isn't anything new, but someone getting neutered like this is something that's a first for the school. Through the windows, all of the students watch the bully getting loaded into the ambulance. Mu is glad that this place even offers house call treatments. As the ambulance van speeds off, he bids a final goodbye to the bully in good spirits. While our boy has earned the thrill of the fight he was craving, it's now finally time to face the consequences. His annoyed teacher is standing right behind him. Once they get into the office, the teacher begins berating Mu. The teacher is so pissed that he instinctively raises his hand to hit Mu. Mu, on the other hand, just gets thrilled at the thought of the oncoming blow and actually wants the teacher to hit him. But seeing how worked up Mu looks, the teacher begins to flinch and stops dead in his tracks. The teacher simply twirls away, believing that arguing with this nut job is pointless. So he tells Mu to bring his parents, and with that, dismisses him with permission to leave the school early. A while later, Mu can be seen walking down the streets with his mood visibly down, since he wasn't able to fight more. Though it's good that he got freed early, as he needed time to recover from the damage. There's a lot to do if he wants to keep fighting with this weak body. If only he could use mana, it would be a game changer for him. About mana, It's the power beyond humans, called by various names like Kai or Chakra in some places, but in most cases, it's just called mana. Basically, mana is the life force present everywhere in nature. In some worlds, humans become hunters using it. In others, they become wizards. But on Earth, there's no mana, so no magic or skills that require mana can be used. He even tries to wield magic, but his attempt goes fruitless. Seems like Mu has no choice but to solely rely on his physical strength. Regardless, he decides to head back to God's sanctuary and return tomorrow once the body is fully healed. When he gets back, he notices Li Ho choking the life out of poor Yong. A few minutes later, Li Ho directly addresses Mu, expressing his desire to take the dragon with him to another world. After all, he says, if I have this dragon, I'll be overpowered from the very beginning. But Mu doesn't pay much attention to the human's words. He simply conjures up a giant hand that grabs Li Ho and begins walking away without clarifying his intentions. Though he does briefly mention that he's definitely going to send Li Ho to another world. A while later, we reach Lucifer's domain, the second-rank god. Mu barges into the castle without asking for permission or anything. Lucifer, meanwhile, already knows what's going on and why Mu is here. So, he flatly refuses him without even hearing him out. But Mu insists and makes it clear that he's already decided to send this prick to another world. So, he says, I humbly request you to open the gate. Lucifer, of course, hates Mu's guts and how he's trying to boss him around. Besides, he has no reason to comply with Mu's commands. Mu quickly reminds Lucifer about the significant gap between their strengths. That should be more than enough reason for you to comply, he says. But if you still have any problem following what you're being told, then you can try hitting me and we'll settle it. Of course, Lucifer knows exactly where this is going, so all he can do is fume in anger. Eventually, he relents and proceeds to open the gate. But Mu quickly stops him, deciding to handle things on his own. Lucifer reminds him that interfering in another god's domain is against the god's unwritten rules. He warns that if a god interferes with a fellow god's domain, then a defensive barrier will activate. Mu, being Mu, breaks the barrier with his bare hands despite the clear warning, leaving Lucifer absolutely speechless. After breaking that barrier, Mu then releases his grip on the boy and instructs him to hop through the portal, assuring him he'll be in another world. But Li Ho isn't so sure if he wants to head into some unknown place without the dragon he requested. Mu blatantly declines, stating that Yong belongs to him. He simply wishes Li Ho the best of luck in finding a dragon of his own. With that, he flicks Li Ho with his giant hand toward the portal, sending him to the new world. Once the mission has been accomplished, Mu decides to take his leave. Lucifer, on the other hand, is left standing there, his hands trembling with rage. You see, Lucifer originally came from his own domain, the planet Alum. He was the first demon king, standing at the pinnacle of all living beings. With all the power he had under his belt, he became too arrogant, to the point that he challenged the existence known as God. And surprisingly, he successfully killed the god he had challenged, taking their place. Basically, he rose to the top by defeating other gods. At that time, Lucifer was the god of gods, their absolute ruler, invincible and supreme, legendary and unparalleled, catastrophic and mythological, infinite and transcendent. In short, he was an utterly undefeatable force to reckon with. Well, that was only until Mu appeared. So, in the present, it's not surprising that Lucifer absolutely hates the brute known as Mu. Outside, Mu hops onto Yong to depart. We see one big, ominous eye keeping a close watch over our hero. Let's take another look at Lucifer, who is as red as a tomato, with all the anger bubbling inside him. Now, let's switch back to that bully, whose face creepily resembles an angry Lucifer. He's absolutely annoyed after getting his ass handed to him by a so-called pathetic loser. Though he's not about to let Li Ho off the hook so easily, especially after getting humiliated like that. It's just against his pride. To take revenge, he decides to call in his ace up his sleeve, Cheol Hyung. Enter Kong Cheol, He's a jacked dude and the 11th National Sports Festival Youth Division boxing middleweight champion. As he pours sweat in the gym, a ringing phone in the locker room suddenly catches his attention. It turns out the phone isn't his. It's his friend Guak Chiol's phone. Guak has 2 years of boxing experience under his belt, along with 14 sparring sessions. Guak picks up his cracked phone and answers the call. And of course, the caller is none other than that shithead bully. By the way, I still don't know the bully's name, so let's give him a well-deserved nickname. Chick Puss. Chick Puss offers Guak a new phone to replace his broken one. But in exchange, there's something he wants in return. Well, you know how it goes. Guak is more than willing to help Chick Puss with whatever it is. The next scene transitions into the classroom. Chick Puss enters, his nose and ears still covered in bandages, with his hand also wrapped up after that humiliating loss in front of everyone. He can barely walk into the classroom with his head held high. As expected, he becomes the center of attention, and the students immediately start clamoring about how he ended up like this after always picking on people. They find it hilarious how the once tough guy is now nothing more than a defeated mess. The students who used to be scared of him now think it's ridiculous that they were ever intimidated by this hobo. Eventually, all these insults get under Chick Puss's skin. Slamming his bag down in sheer frustration, he glares at everyone. He confronts the students who are intentionally whispering just loud enough for him to hear. He challenges all of them openly and dares them to face him head-on if they're so eager to pick a fight. While most of the students recoil in fear, one particular student, the class president, stands up from her seat without hesitation. She tells him to shut the fuck up and sit down, or if he doesn't like it, he can leave the class. Chick Puss can't stand the fact that he used to be the hot shot in this room, but now everyone treats him like a complete loser. In a fit of rage, he grabs a chair and yells out a challenge to the entire class, daring anyone to come at him if they're so eager. It's then that a jacked-up guy steps into the classroom. Once he's inside, he questions the loudmouth about why he's standing. Chick Puss doesn't take long to get over his seat while Chick Puss cowers on his seat. The class president gives a quick nod to the teacher, silently assuring that everything is fine. The teacher, however, has other plans. He asks the class president to meet him after school. Apparently, the guy who caused a scene yesterday, Lee Ho, hasn't been answering his phone. The teacher wants the class president to check on him. To sweeten the deal, he promises her a glowing recommendation letter for her senior year. With that, the teacher conveniently dumps his responsibility onto the poor girl and heads out. Later, the class president arrives at the hostel building. She knocks on the door for what feels like ages, but there's no response. Since no one is answering her calls either, she decides to take matters in her own hands and enters the room. The moment she steps inside, 2 things immediately grab her attention. First, there are cockroaches crawling around everywhere. Second, and far more concerning, the man she's looking for is sprawled out on the floor, his eyes rolled back in his head. Her heart races and panic sets in. For a moment, she genuinely believes she's staring at a corpse. Later, we see that Lee Ho's body has been escorted to the hospital. Right at that moment, Mu returns into the body after finding himself in a completely different place than where he last left the body. Mu is naturally curious about his surroundings. As he tries to sit up, he notices he's connected to a drip. Since he does not understand the concept of injections or IVs, he feels dubious about the strange sensation of fluid entering his veins. He focuses on it and soon realizes the fluid contains nutrients which are being absorbed rapidly, helping to speed up his recovery. It's not exactly magic, but whatever this thing is, it's undeniably effective. The thought that even Earth has something as useful as this brings a smile to his face. However, his subtle snickering catches the class president's attention, and it only creeps her out. She then explains that the homeroom teacher instructed her to find him. Now that her mission is successful, she plans to head back. Meanwhile, Mu has a lot of questions he wants answered, so he quickly requests her to wait for a moment so he can ask her a few things. She acknowledges his call and stops upon his insistence, giving him a short period of her time before she proceeds to head to the tuition. Well, it looks like Mu has some questions that could help him learn about this world. The most important thing this fight-obsessed brute wants to know is if there's any place where he can train his body. The girl is completely expressionless, unsure how to respond. since his question came totally out of the blue and was completely unexpected. But after a moment of thought, she decides to guide him. Since Mu broke as hell, he ends up in a public park instead of a jam-packed gym. After doing some pull-ups, Mu feels pretty good. Even though he's just in an ordinary park with basic training equipment, he finds it all incredibly professional compared to what he had back 4,000 years ago. Back in the day, the only exercise he did was stone rolling, cliff climbing, and digging holes. It was all simple, primitive training methods. But looking at this modern equipment, he's forced to admit that Earthlings are tougher than he originally thought. Suddenly, a pebble strikes him out of nowhere. It turns out Chick Puss has shown up, and he's brought along Gwack, the friend he hired if my memory serves right. Chick Puss is drenched in sweat, his face contorted like he's dealing with some serious constipation. He's been searching the whole neighborhood for Mu, and of all places, this is where he finally finds him. Meanwhile, Mu picks up the pebble from the ground, trying to figure out who had the nerve to tag him with that thing. Chick Puss, in a not-so-bright mood, admits it was him. He immediately follows up with a threat, bragging that Mu's days are numbered. This is because a cousin of his took out all the third years single-handedly. But before Chick Puss can finish running his mouth, Mu lands a punch so devastating that it sends him straight to the ground. You see, to Mu, that pebble counted as a preemptive attack, which was more than enough justification to start the fight. The scene transitions to the gods' sanctuary, where all the gods are gathered around a grand round table for a regular meeting. But instead of Mu, Yong has taken the seat to represent his master, with a written speech in hand. Yong begins the meeting, prepared to act as a messenger on behalf of his god. Things take a sharp turn when the absolutely livid Lucifer interrupts, demanding to know what, in the actual fuck, Yong is doing there. The poor dragon nearly jumps out of his scales in shock. In a panic, he scrambles to reassure Lucifer that he's only there to deliver a message and will leave right after. After this frantic explanation, Yong gathers himself and proceeds to deliver the message. The message is simple, perhaps too simple. It states that Mu is looking forward to fighting someone stronger than himself and asks to be notified immediately if such a person shows up. And with that, the message concludes. Unsurprisingly, Lucifer is beyond annoyed by this nonsense. He slams the table so hard in frustration that a crack forms along its surface. Still fuming, he vents his frustration aloud. These meetings are already a colossal waste of my time, and now Mu can't even be bothered to show up in person. Lucifer turns to the other gods, questioning if they're really okay with this kind of insincere behavior from Mu. A heavy silence falls over everyone, making it painfully clear that no, they're not okay with it. But at the same time, there's nothing they can do about it, at least not right now. That's when a blue-haired god, the third-ranked deity and divine archer Su, speaks up. She reminds everyone that these meetings are meant to ensure world stability. When an abnormality arises that even the heart god can't handle, everyone is supposed to step in and deal with it. However, she finds it disappointing, if not outright disrespectful, that Mu didn't even bother showing up. Lucifer, already a ticking bomb, erupts again. He roars that the real issue is how maintaining the world seems like nothing more than a game to Mu. He warns that the entire system could collapse with the reckless way Mu keeps acting on his whims. To make matters worse, Mu's so-called solutions always end up making things worse. His anger peaks as he recalls the disaster from 1,000 years ago involving planet Cyclops. Just thinking about it sends his rage into overdrive. The god of Cyclops quickly nods along, visibly uncomfortable as he recalls that catastrophe from 1,000 years ago. By the way, he's the 8th ranked god. Here's a little context about what happened back then on planet Cyclops. Apparently, a void creature, Shaggoth, attacked the planet. While Mu the maniac obliterated the monster with his brute strength, his recklessness caused colossal damage to the planet itself. Lucifer firmly believes that if the gods had worked together, they could have minimized the destruction. Instead, Mu botched the whole thing, allowing the creature to devour part of the planet before taking it down. Lucifer is done tolerating this. He declares that he can no longer watch that lunatic destroy everything in his path. Without hesitation, he goes so far as to claim that Mu isn't even fit to hold the title of a god. Hearing this, Yong panics. The poor reptile can only watch as the god's resentment toward Mu becomes glaringly obvious. With nothing else in his power, all he can do is desperately beg for his master to return and fix things. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Chickpuss is sprawled on the ground after that punch. He's furious, seething at the thought that this idiot didn't even hesitate before decking him, even though his esteemed cousin, the boxer, is standing right there. Gwack finally speaks up. He can tell this kid not only has guts, but also knows how to throw a punch or two. Curiously, he asks Mu if he plays any sports. Of course, this brood has no concept of something as structured as sports, and simply states that all he does is fight. Gwack nearly chokes on his own breath, hearing this clown of a response. But whatever the case, his curiosity is piqued. He's ready to test Mu's mettle and throw a punch or two at him. He takes the liberty to strike first and launches a brutal punch. The result is just as you would expect. Blood sprays from Mu's nose, and he's sent sprawling backward. This outcome doesn't make Gwack happy in the slightest. He's utterly bewildered, realizing that Mu had deliberately watched his punch all the way through and didn't even try to dodge it. Let me remind you, Mu the Maniac doesn't dodge preemptive strikes. Now that the stage is set, our guy is ready to go all out. After observing Gwack's movements, Mu mimics a boxer stance, balling up his fist. He throws a punch with all his might, but Gwack quickly dodges the blow, though the sheer force of the punch sends him skidding backward. The poor guy learns the hard way that this dude, Li Ho, really has something in him. The power behind that punch was downright unreal. Mu, on the other hand, is having the time of his life. Throwing a proper boxing punch for the first time felt like absolute bliss. At the moment of impact, Mu had intentionally tensed his arm muscles as hard as he could. Sure, his arm is screaming in pain now, but it was worth it. That punch felt amazing. He's never experienced this kind of force before, especially not from those weaklings who would break the moment he touched them. Still, if he wants to keep fighting, he knows he needs to take better care of his body. For now, he decides to use a temporary fix in the form of Himanes. Himanes, ancient Greek boxing straps. They're made from 4-meter-long strips of tan cowhide, wrapped tightly around the wrists for support. Meanwhile, Chickpuss is losing his mind, watching his cousin, the so-called boxer, get pushed back. He angrily questions Gwack. "Why are you struggling so much against this nobody?" he demands. Under the mounting pressure, Gwack launches himself forward again, aiming to land another punch. But Mu quickly safeguards himself, effortlessly blocking the attack. Gwack, on the other hand, is gritting his teeth in frustration. He's throwing everything he has, yet this guy is just standing there, stopping all his punches as if it's nothing. Mu, on the other hand, is analyzing every move. He knows how fast and precise Gwack's punches are, but they're way too predictable. Just watching the way his muscles move, Mu can tell exactly where each punch is aimed. Finally, Mu takes a calculated step back, effortlessly avoiding a direct hit. Gwack gets frustrated after having his blow dodged, so he quickly throws another punch. But Mu dodges that one too, and then counters with a perfectly placed punch to Gwack's hand, causing him agonizing pain. Mu finds it funny when he notices how Gwack's pain reaction is quite similar to Chickpuss's expression. If he had any doubts before, they're gone now. These two are definitely cousins. With another decisive blow, Mu knocks Gwack out cold, leaving Chickpuss standing there, frozen in fear under Mu's intense gaze. Mu is eager to finish what they started. Chickpuss can only tremble, his courage completely drained. Seeing Chickpuss cowering in fear, Mu concludes he's lost the will to fight. He directly asks, "Does this bastard plan to fight further?" But before Chickpuss can muster a response, Mu delivers a devastating punch straight to his face. What follows is a relentless flurry of blows. Mu doesn't give Chickpuss even a second to concede defeat. Blow after blow lands, and by the end of it, Chickpuss is beat to a pulp. To finish things off, Mu delivers one final bone-rattling punch, knocking Chickpuss out for good. Satisfied that his opponent has no fight left, Mu turns and walks away, after claiming the ear of Gwack, leaving the two broken cousins behind. Later, Mu returns to his apartment, sitting there and reflecting on the recent events. He admits that fighting has been fun so far, but the fact that his body breaks so easily is holding him back a lot. He never even imagined that his muscles would tear just from throwing a few simple blows. While this muscle-tearing process is crucial for growing stronger and continuing to fight, it constantly interrupts him. He eventually decides to head back to the god's sanctuary to retrieve something he had asked Yong to prepare, a recovery magic orb. However, when he tries to return to the sanctuary, he fails. No matter how hard he concentrates, the transition just doesn't happen, leaving him wondering what in the world is going on. To understand the situation, let's rewind a few days to the divine realm. This is Elmir, under the god Lucifer's charge. This was when Mu had forcefully tossed Li Ho into Lucifer's world. Before leaving, Mu told Yong to try and procure a recovery magic orb, if possible. These orbs, it turns out, are special magical items. They're often found on planets rich in mana, like Elmir. They're common on such worlds, casually used for healing and recovery. But Earth, being a planet with scarce mana, only has these orbs through divine blessings, or the whims of the gods. As a result, they're exceedingly rare on Earth, and only a select few humans throughout history have ever possessed them. Those who did were revered as gods by the rest of humanity. Yong promises to prepare what his master requested before returning. But he curiously asks who will attend the regular meetings if Mu is going to leave. In response, Mu rummages through his pants and pulls out a piece of paper containing the speech the dragon is supposed to deliver. With that, his master leaves. Meanwhile, Lucifer has been keeping a close watch with his giant eye. In the present, there's only one thought on Lucifer's mind. Mu's body is currently empty. Since Mu didn't join the meeting, it means he's planning to stay away for longer. This is a golden opportunity, one Lucifer doesn't want to lose. In fact, it's a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity. Without hesitation, Lucifer quickly uses one of his spells and summons purple rods, letting them crash down. But Yong quickly dodges the attack. Sternly, he questions Lucifer about what he's trying to pull. With a firm tone, the dragon inquires if this is perhaps a declaration of war against the Earth God. Lucifer rises into the air, making it clear that he will expel the Earth God from the seed of divinity. It's a war, and he intends to win. With this declaration, Yong doesn't try to hold back either. He quickly opens his mouth, preparing a compressed breath fire attack, and shoots a beam of fire at Lucifer. But Lucifer casually flings the attack away like it's nothing. The attack literally spans 360 degrees of the entire planet and causes a massive explosion. The explosion is so enormous that even Soso has to activate her self-defense aura, casting it over all the other gods to protect them from the collateral damage. After that massive attack, Yong decides to take things up a notch. He activates his polymorph release ability, and he grows to a massive size. Compared to him, Lucifer looks like a tiny mosquito. But as we all know, size doesn't matter. What truly matters is stamina, and it's no surprise that someone as big as Yong eventually gets outmatched. Soso looks tired already, and since she doesn't want to be part of this mess, she starts to leave. But Lucifer quickly stops her before she leaves. He wants to know where she stands, whether she supports Mu or opposes him. But Soso doesn't want to choose sides, so she decides to remain neutral. Lucifer, however, doesn't care if she stays neutral, as long as she stays out of the way. He turns to the others and tells them to step forward if anyone opposes this idea. If anyone wants to oppose him, he's more than ready to handle them himself. Yong then speaks up, questioning Lucifer's audacity to think he can actually defeat Master Mu. Lucifer sneers in response, confident that Mu, with that weak earthling body, couldn't do a thing. Yong grows concerned when he realizes that Lucifer already knows this. Lucifer reminds the dragon that complacency, lack of strength, and neglecting vigilance will lead to Mu's downfall. But Yong isn't about to let Lucifer have his way. He quickly retaliates with his giant tail, but Lucifer slices through it with his sword as easily as cutting through a cucumber. Severely injured, the poor dragon is left wounded. Lucifer makes it clear that as long as Yong is alive, he can still reach Earth. And once there, he'll make sure to destroy Mu while he's in his weakened state. Yong laughs out loud at Lucifer's words, mocking the idea that this bastard stands a chance. Guac has just come out of the nursery after being patched up. In the gym, he's getting an earful from his senior. His senior does not like the fact that this punk ended up badly injured and now wants to quit fighting, even though the competition is just around the corner. The poor guy can do nothing but apologize. But his apologies don't calm his senior down. The senior instructs him not to come back until his arm is healed and dismisses him, telling him to get out of his sight. After taking the harsh words, the poor guy begins to walk out. As he leaves, he runs into Kong Cheol at the exit. Kong, of course, is not thrilled to see his friend in such a beaten-up state and questions him about the broken arm. Now that Guac thinks about it, Kong is the best boxer in their gym, so he wonders if he might be able to defeat the person who did this. He bows his head in embarrassment before starting to explain. He claims that Chick Puss was getting bullied, so he stepped up to save him. But the opposing party ganged up on him and beat him up. What a coward. He literally twisted the entire story, and just to save his face, he is lying that he was ganged up on, instead of admitting that he was soloed by Mu. Anyway, Guac claims that his left arm and ear are in this condition because of those punks. He even starts crying in order to sway Kong into fighting those bastards for him. But it seems Kong isn't as stupid or brain dead as this blonde. Kong simply tells him that he should have been more careful before the competition, and instead of fighting, he could have done an extra sparring session. Of course, Guac wasn't expecting this response. The fact that Kong isn't even considering helping him just makes him a little annoyed. Suddenly, Kong pauses, turns around with a totally pissed-off face, and asks this idiot who it was that beat him to a pulp. Now let's switch back to Mu. After trying to teleport himself several times, he once again fails to return. This is something very strange, to say the least. There's only one scenario in which he wouldn't be able to return. The first scenario is when the original body is damaged. But Mu is sure his body is supposed to be protected by Yong. And even if it wasn't Yong who damaged the body, there aren't many things that could harm it. That's when a realization dawns on him. He entertains the idea that perhaps all the gods have joined forces to attack him. He feels annoyed to think that, out of all the times, this is when they chose to challenge him. He desperately wants to fight them, but he's not sure how to do it while he's stuck here. After punching the poor pillow into oblivion, Mu tries once again to calm himself down. Even if all the gods attacked him at once, he's confident that Yong wouldn't go down so easily. Still, Mu can't afford to just sit around and do nothing, so he decides to do what he can for now. The next day, we find him once again in the park, where he's back at his strength training. Right now, his main goal is to focus on strengthening muscles other than his arms. He can feel the strain in muscles he doesn't normally use, and though they scream in pain, the sensation is quite thrilling. The more he pushes himself, the more he enjoys it. His laughter echoes through the park as he revels in this moment of rapture. Onlookers nearby are left utterly bewildered, witnessing this strange dude enjoying himself in such an odd, almost unsettling way. After this rigorous training session, his legs finally give out, and he collapses. This is when he notices the class president, who looks less than pleased to see him here. She asks him, somewhat sharply, why the hell he is not attending school. Later, they both sit down, and he initiates the conversation. He questions her on why it's so important for him to be in school, especially since it's not really the place for body training. She asks him what his plan is. He simply replies that he just wants to get stronger, and that's the only reason he's training. The president then asks another daunting question. Why does he want to get stronger? He explains that it's so he can fight better, since right now he's too weak to fight at all. His body is completely untrained, and he needs to build it up. His arms are already in bad shape, even though he's only been in a few fights. With strength training at the gym, he can build endurance, and if he gets stronger, he'll be able to fight longer and possibly more than once, and eventually more than twice. His body will also move better. Hearing this guy ramble on about training nonstop is starting to make the girl feel nauseous. He's been going on for hours, and she's not sure how she's supposed to get this maniac to come to school. Then an idea clicks in her mind. She asks him why he is bothering to train if there's no one to fight. She reminds him that he's just working out alone, with no one around to challenge him. He needs to meet people, stir up some conflict, and only then will he find someone to fight. Before leaving, she instructs him to start coming to school regularly starting tomorrow, and to stop making her put up with more of his nonsense. As she walks away, he starts to see the logic behind her words. It's true that the guys he beat up probably won't show up again, so he'll need to find stronger opponents on his own. And looking for someone to fight while waiting for his body to recover doesn't sound like such a bad idea. While he's still deciding whether or not to start going to school tomorrow, a shady guy sneaks up behind him and calls out his name. He quickly picks up on the guy's tone and lets out a heavy sigh, feeling a sense of satisfaction. It seems like he's finally found his next target. As the punch comes flying at him, the maniac turns around with a big smile, ready to take it right to the face. Well, that was the end of the first part of the story. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, then give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to share and subscribe my channel Fire Recap. I am out.